My mom had me when she was a teenager. She had me 2 days before she turned 14.
What?
My grandma was divorced and then had my mom with someone else. So multiple men. Then my mom didn't get married at all. So I was determined to change that story. Everyone's perspective or their perception is their reality. It is critical that you don't get caught up in the bill paying mode and miss your purpose in life.
It's not the quantity of life that we live, but the quality of life and the moments that we pack into that life that really count.
Christianity is not a religion, in my opinion.
Okay.
It's a lifestyle. You can't separate your spirituality from your work or from your marketplace. You can change who you are when you get home versus when you go to work. Do what you love and love what you do, and you'll never work a day of your life.
But at times, what people love does not bring money immediately.
I say you navigate that as a process, doing what you need to do to create the stability, and then you follow your passion. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
So what are some 3 practical things that people need to change or do to change their positions and turn their life around?
Live below your means. Figure out how to have multiple sources of income. Educate yourself. Take responsibility for your life, or take instructions forever.
Take responsibility for your life or take instruction forever. You are welcome to the Voyage. This is the Voyage edition of today. The Voyage is an interesting conversation that I have with people, not just immigrants, but everyone with a story. And behind every story, there is a story that is untold. And the conversation today is not just ordinary conversation. This is about connection, this is about truth, and this is about legacy. And this is going to inspire you. This is going to be fun and exciting. And in the house today with me, I have a very special guest that I'm dying to reveal. So stay in and don't go. This is going to be exciting. You are going to hear stories that will challenge you, stories that will inspire you, and stories that you open your mouth and say, wow, I've never heard of this before. So stay in and let's get into the Voyage for today. So here we have a very special guest in the house. You know, when I first met you, it was like, I think you reached out to me online or somehow, maybe a text message while I was, planning for a program, the Jollof event. And, it was your energy and your energy that said, wow, caught my attention. And then when we begin to talk, I said, wow, this is a very known face in the Nashville, Tennessee community. And therefore, I have to connect with her one way or the other. And so since then, I said, wow, this is somebody that is worth sitting down and getting to know. And so let's dive into our conversation straight away.
All right.
With a little things that I've been able to gather about you, I say that you have a very vast array of career, beyond all of the titles, beyond all of the accomplishment. Who is Gina? Can we meet you?
Absolutely. Behind all the titles, if stripped away, Gina is a woman of deep faith. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. Of course, all the other successes count, but it is critical to understand that my passion is lifting others up. My passion is training others. My passion is being able to pass on my experiences. I mean, experience, they say, is the best teacher, but it doesn't always have to be yours. And we all have experiences, so it's critical that we let others live through us so they don't make the same mistake. So Gina is a visionary, a wife, a mother, and someone who wants to build a legacy changing lives.
Wow, that is a lot to pack into this session. I mean, you wear many hats.
I do.
I mean, the question coming straight to my heart is, how do you juggle all of these different personalities, different responsibilities together?
I would say planning. And it may appear as if I do a lot, but one thing I try to do is to do things that are related to each other. Because they are connected, it might appear to be a lot, but you leverage on doing this one thing and it affects the other. So yes, I'm a mother, I'm a professional CPA, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a minister, but all of this involves serving God and serving people. And so if you bring them all together, you're leveraging the same skills And one thing I do is I stack my activities. So I might be doing 10 million things in the same hour, but they're connected. And so by the time one task is accomplished, it serves multiple purposes. And that's how I juggle.
Still talking about the woman behind the titles, seeing that you juggle so many responsibilities together, is there any conflict in juggling all of these different responsibilities together?
I would say there is a conflict because time and resources are finite. And in order to be able to appropriately allocate your time and your resources to all these activities without sacrificing, there will be some conflict. But it is important that you do your cost benefit analysis, your opportunity cost in every situation, and determine what needs to be let go, because sometimes you do have to let go of things. You have to take a few steps back in order to take one forward.
With the little that I've known about you, it is easy to misunderstand somebody like you that knows what she wants
Yeah.
and that goes for what she wants. And so when people that don't know you or people that just see you online, what do people misunderstand about Gina?
What people may misunderstand about Gina is the fact that I have to talk to myself a lot. There are internal struggles and battles that you have to confront. There are spiritual battles that you have to confront. And you have to figure out how to balance your relationships and set boundaries, bring people on board to understand your perspective, because everyone's perspective or their perception is their reality. So, yes, indeed, it is easy to be misunderstood, but I always try the very best I can to let people understand, yes, you may see it from this perspective, but can we dialogue? Can we have a conversation so you can see it from a different perspective?
Wonderful, wonderful. So, in the light of that, how did you find your purpose? How are you able to, because all of this, it's we remove the titles. It gives you an idea that you have a very clear idea of who you want to be. How did you get to that?
That's a very interesting question. So, if we remove the title of being a CPA, although there's something in life, we all do things to pay bills.
Yes.
And we do things to fulfill our destinies.
Correct.
And it is critical that you don't get caught up in the bill paying mode and miss your purpose in life.
Wow.
So I've always known that, yes, I love being a CPA, but my passion is training. My passion is speaking. And so constantly I brought that to the forefront. Fortunately for me, being a CPA, I get to do some of that because I have a team to train. I get to do presentations because I have to meet various boards. So some little portion of my life ends up leveraging on this skill and this passion that I have. But as I grew older, I realized that I need to be reinventing myself, because when I retire, I know what I want to do. And I don't want to wait till I'm old to start doing what I am passionate about and what gives me joy. So I've clearly communicated that with my executives. Everyone knows what I plan to do and where my intent is. So over the last maybe 3 or 4 years, I had been pushing aggressively towards transitioning from being that traditional auditor into doing more coaching, more training, and development. And as you know, being in a small CPA firm, especially in the environment in which we find ourselves, people are just quitting accounting. Sadly, we haven't made accounting sexy enough. The tech industry has won.
Yep.
And the entertainment industry has won. So we're not getting as many people coming to the field. So it's always been short-staffed, a moving target, and the conversation has always centered around, we totally agree. We know you're talented. We know you're passionate about this piece, but maybe we can have that conversation after we finish this project or after that project. And that time never came. So I'm going to say I got a breaking point sometime last year. Towards the end of the year, I just felt like I can't do this anymore. Today is the day this needs to happen. And I remember that day as clear as day, because it was a holiday party for our firm. And then we had a company photo shoot. Took the suit out, put it down, attempted to put it on. It was a struggle
Wow,
to
really?
just put on that suit that day. I
Interesting.
struggled. And you know what happened? After I dressed up and all that, I decided I'm not going.
Really?
Yes, today is the day I'm not going to make it.
Wow.
Because everyone has been so used to me showing up no matter what, no matter how I felt. And I just felt like I wasn't being heard. And so I had to do something dramatic to convey my message. So I just simply didn't show up. And my 6-month sabbatical actually started from that day.
Interesting. Wow.
So anyway, talking about the things that I'm passionate about and how I discovered my purpose, the conversation that my partner and I had and our CEO is, that's great. Although we are a traditional CPA firm, we can incorporate some form of training, some form of coaching to accommodate what you're passionate about doing. But then we got to come up with a topic. What are you going to train about? What is your niche? And that was difficult to identify because I'm used to speaking in church, but this is not church. This is the marketplace. So we got to determine what your niche is. And that was difficult to identify. But I'll tell you what happened. At the end of my 6-month sabbatical, I can hear it as clear as it happened. The Holy Spirit just said to me, this is it.
Wow.
You're going to be a burnout prevention and recovery coach.
A burnout prevention and recovery coach.
Exactly. Because that's literally what you just experienced. And fortunately, you were able to come out of it because a lot of people get burned out and never recover.
Very
or
true.
Get burned out and never are able to pivot again. They get shunned by the environment in which they find themselves. But after the end of my 6-month sabbatical, maybe 2 weeks after I started getting into the swing of things, my husband just looked at me and said, well, you've done more in 2 weeks than most people get done in 6 months.
Really?
And that spoke volumes. Like the kind of deals that I got done within the first 2 months, literally, because I've been back since only July. And
so this is a very recent
this is
development.
a very, very recent. I was on sabbatical from November of 24 until July this year.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. See, you said something that is very powerful that I don't want us to overlook, that a lot of people live their life and do job that just pays their bill, whereas there are people who are engaged in jobs that is an expression of their passion and an expression of their purpose. And it is important to find where they can bridge the two.
Exactly.
And you have been able to, after a couple of years, you've been able to redirect and say, yeah, I know what my passion and what my purpose is in life.
Absolutely.
Now, this is taking me to a very interesting question now, because you brought in a very interesting personality into this conversation, and that is the person of the Holy Spirit, right? So it appears that several people separate the secular from the, what is the word that they call it now? The sacred.
Okay.
That say, well, if you are into ministry, you are the pastor or whatever, that is spiritual. But if you are into the real market work, like a CPA, that is not spiritual work. What is your take on that?
I absolutely disagree with that. The Bible, well, first of all, Christianity is not a religion, in my opinion.
Okay.
It's a lifestyle.
Interesting.
And we're called not just in church, but we're called to minister after the four walls of the church. We're called into the marketplace. The disciples of Jesus, they were not just preaching in the temple. They were out in the fields, in the marketplace. And there are people from the day we started the ministry, we have never been traditional ministers. Our understanding is there will be people that will never enter the church. There's nothing you can do about that. Sure. You got to figure out how to meet them where they are. And that's actually what birthed the African Heritage Festival, for instance, because at the time we started the African Heritage Festival, this was in 2010 or prior to that, we were not in ministry because we didn't start our ministry until 2014 as far as the physical ministry. But what we did was we have relationships with most of the African ministers in the area. So even at Gateway, we were utilizing Gateway as a source of ministry because there are churches that would show up there on Saturday and have a chest of water, like cooler of water in the front, and they'll be passing it out to customers as they go along with their flyers. When we thought about the African Heritage Festival, every single African church in the area will attest to this. We wrote a letter to every one of them, and we told them that our job is to gather the people. Your job is to evangelize. So you guys need to figure out how you're going to make this work. Because if we tell them we're inviting them to a crusade, they're not going to show up.
Yeah,
but if we say we're inviting them to a festival, they're going to show up in droves. So you figure it out. And a lot of the churches really understood what we were talking about, and they would do what they needed to do to get the word out and mingle with people. So we've never been traditional ministers, and it's the same concept. And honestly, when you think about the concepts of the Bible and you compare it to principles of business, none of the new principles that we are trying to implement or spread are new. They all go right back to the Bible. So you can't separate your spirituality from your work or from your marketplace. It's a lifestyle. You can change who you are when you get home versus when you go to work.
Absolutely. 100% on point.
Thank you.
Take me back to the day you left Ghana.
Ooh-wee.
I know. That must be an interesting day.
It was.
What happened? Get into the plane. Try to imagine that day. How long was that? And arriving in the US, what was your experience like?
Okay.
And possibly culture shock.
All right. So I'm going to say that I'm an only child. I was raised up an only child. Okay. And I was very close to my mom and my grandma in particular. And so my mom had me when she was a teenager. She had me 2 days before she turned 14. So
wait.
Yeah.
Your mom had you 2 days before she turned 14?
Exactly.
Tell me more about that.
So practically, my grandma raised both of us like sisters. And my mom was very protective of me. I never went to boarding school. You know, in Africa, most people get to go to boarding house for secondary school. No, I stayed home for my secondary school. The first time I left home was going to college. And when I went to college, I don't know if the customs officers in Nigeria wear the same uniforms that look like the police.
Yes.
Okay, so my mom was a customs officer.
Okay.
So you can see her from a mile away.
Okay.
I'll be in the library a couple of times a week and someone would just say, your mom is here, she's looking for you. She's at the Hall of Residence. I mean, she was there so much. My friends would just joke that we should just get her a room here, you know, because we were that close and she was that protective. So you can imagine the emotions and everything when it was time for me to leave. What may have helped the situation a little bit is after I graduated from college in 98, I came here first for a visit, then went back home before I ultimately relocated. So that may have helped a bit, but her knowing that I was actually going to be gone for an extended period of time was difficult for her. And difficult for me. But of course, I've always been an independent person. So it may not have been as difficult for me as it was for her, but I was excited and I have always been very, very close to my friends. So I stay in touch with my secondary school, high school friends, college friends. And so I had friends in New Jersey. So I just said, I'm heading your way. And one of them came to pick me at the airport, took me to his home. I settled down for a day or two in New Jersey before I ultimately made my way here to Nashville. So it was a day of a lot of excitement, determination, anxiety in a sense, but I've always known what I wanted in life. It was clear where my path was going to go. I believe in God and I believe in the vision that He has shown me for my life. So I didn't come panicking. I came determined. I came ready to conquer. And it was my dad lives here actually. So I didn't just get thrown into a strange environment. I came to school, but then although I came to do my master's, I already had a foundation here. I had a parent. And so, and the funny thing is my dad has always been overseas since I was a child. So that was the first time I was going to live with my dad.
Wow.
After college is the absolute first time that I remember, because I was too young when he left. So I left one parent and then I was here to develop a totally new relationship with the other parent.
How did you adjust?
So it was very good. My dad is a very kind person. He's a very, very thoughtful person. It was exciting for me because I got here and he had my room decorated, teddy bear on the bed, like he was ready to roll with this child of his. And it was, I mean, I ended up living with him for just about 6 months out of 5, but it was a good 6 months.
Now, a lot of people do complain of their background as being responsible to hold them back to becoming great or to achieve success in life. Knowing that your mom was 14 years old when she gave birth to you, did that serve as an obstacle to your progress and to you determining your purpose in life?
I would say that actually served as a catalyst
Really?
rather than, yes. And I would say that because my grandparents were educated and they were both on both sides of the families, both maternal and paternal, were very committed to ensuring that she got her education. So they said, we're going to take care of this child. You need to focus. So she's actually responsible for me being an accountant because she was an accountant too. So I grew up going to study groups with her because she ended up going to college in the same exact college that I attended. So it was never an obstacle, but it just gave me a determination to what I will not become. And that wired me into being very cautious in making my decisions because I wanted to make sure that if I was going to become a statistic, it would be a good statistic and not a negative statistic.
That is very important and powerful. That story did not serve as you didn't take the negativity from it, but you said, well, this gives me a picture of who and what I will now become.
Exactly.
And you use it as a stepping stone. That is powerful.
Thank you.
I like that. So are you still connected to your mom?
So, sad story. Let's get into that piece. So after I got here in the fall of 1999, I met my husband literally the same week that I got here.
Really?
In
Love at
church.
first sight?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
My
Okay.
dad and his mom attended the same church. So I met him the very first week that I got here. And then we started dating. And so I got here in August. And by December, actually on Christmas Day, we were engaged.
Wow.
And then by first week in March, we were married. So,
Wait, slow down, please. Within 5 months?
Yeah,
Even within
literally.
3 months of knowing him?
Yeah, seriously.
You married your husband within 3 months of knowing him?
Well, let's add another 3 months to it because I came in the summer, then I went back to Ghana.
Okay.
But we weren't dating at the time.
Yeah.
We were talking, but I went on a trip to Ghana. I said I was going to go back to Ghana, get my student visa, and come back. And that's another story. I mean, a lot of immigrants get caught up on the wrong side of things. Let's put it that way. Because when I came, my intent was to make sure I got everything correct, go back and get my student visa, and then come back. And I remember a lot of my dad's friends try to convince me to stay. And they told my dad, don't let her leave. What if she goes and they don't give her the visa? And I said, I'm going because I don't want a situation where I stay here and then all of a sudden my options are limited. So I can succeed in Ghana and I can succeed here. So I'm going back. I've already come here, done all the paperwork that is needed. I'm taking it with me to go get my I-20 so I can come back. And my husband, for some reason, thought I wouldn't come back. So he actually followed me to Ghana.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So when we got back in the fall and I started school, that's when we actually got serious about dating. And then on Christmas Day, we got engaged. And it was this funny thing that happened. I know you look surprised when I say we got engaged on Christmas Day. And by first week in March, we were married.
Yeah.
I woke up one day and I had this feeling that someone was going to pass away.
Wow.
There are two very important people in my life, my mom and my grandma. And something on the inside of me just said, if you don't get married now, one of them is going to miss the wedding.
What?
And I didn't want to live with that. Obviously, because my grandma was older, I assumed
She would be
she'll
the
be the
one.
one, right? So March 4th of 2000 was her 70th birthday. So I just told my husband, I said, we're getting married and we're getting married on March 4th because that's my grandma's 70th birthday. So we just started rolling towards that. And we talked to our pastor. It was so funny because the very first counseling section we went, we told the pastor, oh, we just want to do something small. It's going to be at my dad's clubhouse and all that. Nothing major. And then by the next week, when we went, we had changed the story. We told the pastor, oh, we're having a wedding in the church. And the look on the pastor's face was priceless because he was like, well, do you realize you need a dress? You need this. And literally in the 1 week, everything that he mentioned, we said, oh, we were already taking care of it. Oh, I already got a dress. Oh, I already this. And he was looking at us like, okay. Then we said, oh, we're just going to have a maid of honor and a best man. And then it went from that to having a few bridesmaids, a few junior bridesmaids, it was like a large party because at some point I just said, you know what? I'm going to do this once. You're going to do it right so you don't look back on it with regrets. So God being so good, both my mom and my grandma got visas in that short amount of time.
Wow, beautiful.
To make it to the wedding. But then once they went back in a matter of weeks, my mom passed away.
What?
Yes, believe it or not. Her birthday, remember I told you she had me 2 days before. So my birthday's in June and 2 days away from her birthday. We got married in March and she didn't make it to see her birthday in June.
Goodness.
So yeah, I chose the wrong person, but at least I got somebody.
Wow, that's a powerful story.
And to me, that's what comforts me. I can look back and say, you know what, she did. And she was in her 30s when she passed away.
Wow.
So, even though she lived a short life, I felt like God had a part in it. God knew, because how many 30-year-olds already have a child that has graduated from college? So I feel like she accelerated. Her life was accelerated by God. She did everything she can. She invested in me, invested in part-time tutors, and I got a first class in accounting, which is not easy in the University of Ghana. So I know that she finished her job. Like, I can put it that way. Even though her life was short, Jesus lived for 33. So hey.
So it is not how long,
No.
but how well. It is not the quantity of life that we live, but the quality of life and the moment that we're packed into that life that really counts.
And the legacy you leave behind.
Did pack a whole lot into that life, especially giving back to you and all the amazing and wonderful things you are doing now.
Thank you.
Wow, that's a beautiful story there.
Thank you.
Now, knowing that you left Ghana at when you were in your teenage years, your 20s,
early 20s, 22.
What were the burdens in your heart? Definitely, you said you knew what you were coming here to do, and you did not want your options to be limited. Apart from the suitcase that you carried, what else did you carry in your heart?
What I carried in my heart was a determination to stop a generational, I don't want to call it a curse, but I'm going to say a pattern.
Okay.
I'm going to say a pattern because my grandma was divorced and then had my mom with someone else. So multiple men. Then my mom didn't get married at all. So I was determined to change that story.
You were determined to change that story.
Yes. Not just for myself, but for generations after me. And so from the get-go, anyone who knew me would tell you, or came to our house would tell you this. Within a year of being married, we bought our first house, a 4-bedroom in Murfreesboro. And when you came, on the kitchen fridge, it had the number of children, literally pictures, 2 girls and a boy. It was on that fridge. The home we're going to live in when we are in our 40s and 50s. It was all laid out because it was critical for me to keep that focus. It was critical to say, I'm doing this not just for me, but for generations to come, because someone has to make a determination and say, this pattern stops with me, and take ownership.
This pattern stops with me. Wow. You made that determination.
Yes.
Interesting. I'm curious. An average 20-year-old person would not think like that.
I agree.
You saw a pattern and you now say, well, this pattern stops with me. Not just that it stops with you, but you want to recreate the future for the coming generations. What was responsible for that level of thinking?
I would say God, because in secondary school, I became saved. And
Tell me, what does that mean?
So in secondary school, I met the Lord, made him my personal Lord and Savior. And that's why I say Christianity is not a religion, it is a lifestyle. So I got exposed to a lot of truth that the average 22-year-old is not exposed to. I was actively part of scripture union, actively part of youth groups. And I had posted a picture on Facebook. I think it may have been yesterday because this was 1995. I had just turned 18 when we had this prayer camp. And typically when you go to a prayer camp, they want everybody to become spiritual, right? So we were told to fast till 6 p.m. each day. The first day we got there, when 6 o'clock hit, something on the inside of me said, you're not breaking this fast. And I'm going to fast for the entire 4 days that I was here.
Entire 4 days fasting?
Yes, as a teenager. So that's when I made that decision that I'm going to wrestle with God. The Bible talks about the fact, because some things have to be revealed to you. You get a truth and it can't be taken away from you. So the scripture about the fact that Jacob wrestled with God and said, I'm not letting you go until you bless me. That was my posture in December of 1995 at that end of year youth prayer camp. I said, God, you have to fix this. You have to change this. You have to make me this. And it's me and you. These 4 days. And it's, the fear of God, the Bible says, is the beginning of wisdom. And so that's why I say all those revelations or desires may not be typical for someone my age, but I believe that's wisdom that God gives and the Holy Spirit gives.
That is beautiful. So your conversion, your experience, your relationship with Christ gives you a different way of thinking and also a different outlook to life.
Absolutely.
That is beautiful.
Thank you.
Knowing that everyone, yes, it was not a big surprise when you relocate to the US, you were able to accustom very well. Was there ever a time that you felt any form of discrimination or that you felt, what am I doing here? I don't belong here?
I would say maybe in my very first job, because when you relocated here, of course, we all carry some form of baggage. Like you said, not the suitcase, but you start to talk and people will say, huh?
The accent.
You know what that means? So I would say that was quite a challenge for me at the beginning, because my very first couple of jobs were in predominantly Caucasian environments. Because I had a job at Nissan's corporate office in Smyrna as an analyst. I was the staff accountant for a healthcare company. And so being in that environment, you have to shine. You said you graduated college.
Yeah, sure is.
It's time to prove it. And so I'll say my biggest hurdle was getting adjusted. It's a mental thing, because you're inclined to say schedule, but you got to tell yourself it's not schedule, it's schedule. So just that process of being able to navigate the change of language and what you're accustomed to, I would say was the most difficult. Discriminated against, not to my face, that I would say, but you turn to have your own internal struggles, I would say. Yeah. Sometimes you would question yourself, because, think about it. Nissan is a big environment. Yeah. You just got here, you are in that environment. You would wonder, do I belong here, or how do I prove that I belong here? So I'll say those struggles.
So then how did you navigate them, those internal struggles and all of that?
Well, I would say I navigated those by convincing myself that I earned my spot in this place. When I got here, of course, I enrolled in college at MTSU. So I was pursuing my master's degree, and then I took the CPA exam. A lot of folks said that was a very difficult exam to take. And I said, I'm taking all 4 parts at the same time. And they're like, wait, what? Even my classmates, they're like, what are you talking about? Like, this is something you take one at a time? I said, no, I registered for all 4. I'm taking all 4. And then I took it, and the first time I passed 3 of them, and I missed the 4th one by just a couple of points. So that gave me confidence, because I'm proving that my accent may be one way, but my level of intelligence is up to par because the test doesn't have an accent and the test doesn't recognize the accent,
Very right.
So being those small wins gave me confidence. And then I rewrote the part that I didn't pass the next go around and knocked it out. And having just relocated here, when you speak to people and you say, oh, I just got here from Ghana, da, 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 da. And then you say, oh, and I just passed my CPA exam. They look at you like, whoa. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I did something after all. So, yeah, those wins, little wins boost your level of confidence. And I think investing in ourselves helps us break down those barriers as well, because you and I both know education is what levels the playing field. So if you educate yourself about the system and you're communicating intelligently when you're speaking to people, it will suddenly start to get rid of some of those, what would I say, complexes that you have.
Very true. Now, it appears that, your stories or your career has always been like a smooth, a voyage. Like, you work at Nissan, you work at IBM, a CPA. Everything seems to have been going so smoothly for you. Is there a story behind the story that we don't know about that you'd like to share?
Absolutely. So while I was at Nissan, I found out I was going to have my first child. And I've done a whole bunch of things, like sold prepaid legal, Primerica, all these different, because everybody bringing you something, right? Yeah. One thing I know is being in these MLMs, you might not make your millions there, right? But they'll teach you, they'll equip you. And we had attended a convention in Vegas, and this gentleman, I can't remember his name, but he spoke and he said, one thing that stuck with me, he said, take responsibility for your life or take instructions forever.
Wow. Take responsibility for your life or take instruction forever. That's a good nugget.
Yes, so that stuck with me. So the moment I found out I was going to have my first child, that just kept ringing in my mind. And I said, well, you're about to have a child. She's going to have doctor's appointments. You're going to have things you want to do with this child. If you don't take responsibility for your life now, you're going to be taking instructions from someone concerning this child forever. You're going to have to be begging. Can I take my child to this? Can I do this? Can I do this? And someone's going to say no. So as soon as I found out I was going to have a child, I gave my notice. I said, I'm out of here. Wow. And my manager was so shocked because she said, well, you've passed your exam and da, da, da. So she said, well, you know what? We're going to give you 6 months. I think 6 months is the magic thing for me. She said, we're going to hold your position for 6 months. If you change your mind, let us know. I never called or emailed. So that was the end of that story. But what I did back then is I researched and found a mortgage company in North Carolina that was looking for loan officers, remote loan officers, back in 2003.
You've done it. You've been a mortgage lender too? Oh my goodness. Okay. This is getting exciting.
So I signed up to be a loan officer. They would allow you to open a branch in your home. So that gave me a remote working job. So I was able to have my child, raise my child while I still did something that would generate some form of earnings. And then what that did was give me education that has equipped me in all that I do. Loan officers are scared of me because you bring whatever you say, I already have some clear understanding on what's going on. You can't just stick anything anywhere and think I'm not going to find it. We're going to have a problem. And so I was able to do that. It was not a straight shot. Like you said, I've been a loan officer. And then the other part that most people may never find out about or know about is when you move here from Ghana, Nigeria, wherever, most people are going to tell you the only professions that pay a lot of money is nursing and being a doctor.
Right.
If you don't do these two things, you haven't made it, right?
Right.
So my family would just keep talking. You're so smart. You should go to nursing school. You should be a doctor. Da 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 da. So while we started Gateway, while I was doing the mortgages and everything, right? And then I said, you know what? I'm so tired of hearing this. You should become a doctor and a nurse. Before I decide to go spend 4 years somewhere and waste my money and find out this is not something I want to do and get stuck in a job I hate. Let me just find myself in the hospital environment.
Okay.
and totally understand what happens here. So I signed up and went to class to become a CNA. And then I got a job at Vanderbilt.
Wow.
And guess what? They didn't find any light place to put me. They put me in trauma unit.
Oh my goodness.
Every day when I got off from work, I would cry from Vanderbilt to the house.
Wow.
Because I would see teenagers that are brain dead. I would see someone who just turned 16, got a car as a gift and wrecked it. And I cried and cried and cried. And after 6 months, I said, this ain't for me.
No way.
Peace out. Let me go back to doing my accounting. So yeah, it hasn't been a straight shot. And then both my husband and I, when we started Gateway, we were both full-time in Gateway because my husband is a software engineer.
Okay.
And the company that he worked for was relocating to Texas. They gave him an option. You can either go to Texas or Mexico, or you don't have a job. And we decided he's not going to either of those places, so he got laid off. So he and I were both full-time Gateway employees when we started Gateway. 4 years after that, he went back to his profession, and then the next year I went back.
Now that you mentioned the Gateway to Africa, let's dive into that story.
Okay.
When I came to Nashville, Gateway to Africa was, I think, the go-to place for your grocery. You are
Absolutely.
looking for any African food in Nashville, Gateway to Africa grocery store was the place to go. I mean, that was the happening place.
Right.
And it was shocking when I realized that it was no longer functioning.
Yeah.
I understand that the Gateway to Africa still had some other travel and other cultural things that you guys are still doing. But knowing your level of determination, grit, what happened to Gateway to Africa grocery store?
Okay, perfect. Let's dive into that. So we relocated. You may or may not be aware that we had moved from Memphisboro Road to the Global Mall.
Okay.
And when we moved to the Global Mall, within just a couple of months, the Global Mall was sold. And the tenants were asked to vacate. At the time, my dad was very sick and he needed our full attention. Our children were toddlers when we started Gateway, but they were now teenagers. And my husband and I just looked at each other and made a decision. No, something's gonna give. Because what most people didn't realize is we had full-time jobs for 10 straight years.
I didn't know that. I thought Gateway was just your full-time thing then.
No, before we closed the physical store, we had full-time jobs that we had worked for straight 10 years.
Wow.
So when we got out of work, we went to the Global Mall or wherever Gateway was located and take care of things before we went home to our children.
Really?
Yes. And being that we had young children, that can be tasking on
Definitely.
them. There's homework and other things that needed to be done. And so we were juggling a lot. I just used to laugh so much when I run into people at a party or something and they'll say, you've become madam. Now we don't see you at the store anymore. I'm like, you guys are so funny. You don't even know that I have a job, do you? But anyway, we just decided it was going to become too much for our family to relocate again because we just, it's not easy to relocate, rebrand, market, and let people know where you're located. And then you have to do it again. We just said, no, this is not worth our time because something's going to end up giving. Sure. We're either going to lose our children because these teenagers need us. These are their formative years. And my dad is sick. We can't go from work to Gateway and get home at what time. So we can always open another storefront if we want to. We can never get back our teenage years for our children. Very if my dad lost his life, we could never get that back. So you have to make a decision. You have to prioritize and decide what you have to give and what the opportunity cost looks like.
Wow. So it appears to me that money was not just your drive. Acquiring money wasn't your major drive, but having that connection, having that training your kids was something that is even much more important to you than chasing or pursuing money, which I see quite a lot of immigrants run after today, and it is still from how do they say it now, month to month, they still can still meet as well. So for you as a person, even I'm curious to know, you talk a little bit about how your husband was working as a software engineer, and then the job ends, and then he has to come into the full-time working at Gateway to Africa store. Then people don't realize how failure shaped us, or how failures contribute to who we are in life.
Absolutely.
When you look at your journey, either in business, in your professional career, or even as a mother, what were some failures that shaped you, that you now use as a stepping stone?
Absolutely. I'll definitely say you can look at a glass as half full or half empty. It's all in a matter of perspective.
Definitely.
And you can see failure as an end in itself, or I just learned a way of not doing something.
Very true.
So for us, we wouldn't call anything in our lives a failure. We would just call it an experience, a learning experience, a way of not doing something. Case in point, there was a second Gateway to Africa location in Laverne that we opened. You may or may not know about that. But it became too much. And we just had to decide, well, maybe you're going a little too fast for the comfort of your family. So we had to let go of that. I wouldn't call that a failure. I'll just call it a way of learning what not to do. I would also say during not prioritizing myself, I'm going to speak for myself, at some point affected my family in a sense, because although I was pushing back last year, my last daughter graduated from college, and I was so burnt out at that time. I didn't even have the energy to organize a graduation party for her. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
I didn't have the energy to do anything at all. And so sometimes we have to realize what's important in life. If we don't push back, if we don't advocate for ourselves, if we don't recognize that true failure is if you experience something and you don't learn anything from it and you keep repeating it. So,
and that's why they say it is a mad person that keep repeating the same thing and expect a different result.
I agree. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over. So definitely just walking through this journey, and even with how we operate at Gateway, it's funny because people just think about a grocery store. But from the get-go, we didn't call it Chris and Gina Market for a reason. We called it Gateway to Africa because Ghana is known as the gateway to Africa.
Okay,
and so
we can compete about that, but for the sake of our time, I will say, okay, right on.
So this is
But
not
they
Ghana
said
versus
Nigeria
Nigeria.
they said Nigeria is the giant of Africa.
I wouldn't dispute that.
Okay.
But Ghana is the gateway.
Alrighty, let's go ahead.
So anyway, with Gateway to Africa, for us, we wouldn't even call the closure of the storefront a failure because it was a means to an end for us rather than an end in itself. It was a way for us to create a home away from home for Africans in Tennessee, and most importantly, a taste of the motherland to others, because each of us have the ability to influence the African narrative. And we realize that the news is not going to do it for us. We have to tell our stories ourselves.
Very
so
true.
One thing that we always did was to push African movies, the good ones, obviously, into the hands of non-Africans because it gave them everyday perspectives into real African lives. And then the trips that we did, it's not just to go see the beauty of Africa, but to give people the ability to change their perspective so they can come back and change someone else's perspective. And we're so proud of one gentleman that we took with us on our very first trip in 2010, I believe. He has not stopped going to Africa.
Wow.
Since our trip to Ghana. He's gone to so many different countries. And last month, he took 150 people to Kenya for his birthday. He just said, I'm celebrating my birthday, and this is where it's happening at. Let's go.
Wow.
And people signed up to go. So our little effort of taking him to give him a true experience has birthed something else. He's doing business in the Gambia. He has a tea farm. He's doing all kinds of stuff with foundations that are changing lives. So you have to understand that it's not about you. And every opportunity that you're given is a seed to influence someone. Someone has access to other people that you don't have access to. So your influence through them is going to create something, and they'll influence someone, and your legacy keeps going on. So Gateway is very proud of what we've done and continue to do. And next year we have an amazing trip coming up. So we're excited about that.
That is interesting. But to wrap up this segment, is the grocery store coming back?
I can't even tell you how many times people have begged us to make that happen. But I'm going to tell you, it's coming back in a different form.
Okay.
It's not going to be the traditional storefront that you're used to. But we understand that there's been a gap that still needs to be filled. So we're working on filling that gap. I mean, I'm sure you're aware that we recently acquired a property on Breakchurch Pike. It's 14 acres. So we've got a lot of room to do all kinds of stuff. It's very versatile. So we're working on some options. So keep your eye out.
All righty. That sounds so interesting. Now, let's talk about your transition phase.
All right.
In 2014,
yes,
an interesting event happened to you and your husband that you almost drowned. Take us back.
Boy.
What happened? How on earth were you both almost drowning? Tell us.
Okay, so here's what happened. Once again, the Holy Spirit is going to come into play here.
Okay.
Because we had taken, we were going on a trip to Ghana, so we took an African-American family with us. We typically do that. Every time we're going, we'll take someone with us to give them that experience, even if it's not a group, at least one person. So we had a family with us. We had my husband's cousins with us, our 3 children, and a friend's brother. And we were moving from Accra to the central region where the castles are. We were going to stay in a beach resort. And the night before we made that trip, I had a dream. And in that dream, our children were playing at the beach, and the tide came and swept them away.
Wow.
So when I woke up, I told my husband, well, here's the dream that I had. So when we go to the beach resort, let's warn everybody. No child is allowed to be playing by the beach, yada, yada. Yeah, we're on the same page, right? So we get to one of the castles along the way to our resort.
Okay.
And it was almost time for them to close. So I told my husband, I'm leaving you with everybody. I'm going to go in and try to make arrangements to see if the security guards would agree to letting us do a quick tour with our African-American family. I come back from the castle and there's no one in our van.
What?
Yes, my whole entire group was behind the castle at the beach.
Oh my goodness.
And I got mad. I got so upset at my husband because I said, I told you I had a dream. I told you to be in charge of this group. How did they get there? And obviously they wanted to experience things. So I get there and they are all taking pictures, but I'm really mad. I'm boiling at this point. So my husband says, let's go take a picture. I'm not taking it. So everybody's done taking their pictures. And at some point, all the children that were with us, at least 7 or 8, they were all standing on different rocks and taking pictures. So when they were done, they moved. And my husband and I took ours last because I was mad, right?
Okay.
So talking about how God divinely intervenes in things, I didn't even know that African-American culture has a thing about putting your purse on the ground. I had never heard it before, but I put my purse, which had our passports, all our money and everything on the ground. And as soon as I did that, my African-American sister grabbed it and she said, don't you know you're not supposed to put your purse on the ground? So she held on to my purse. While we were taking the picture, my husband and I, out of nowhere, a tide came and swept us off.
Oh my goodness.
So I don't know how to swim. My husband does, but here he was trying to save my life. And the thing of it is there are rocks there and they're so slippery. So I was sliding through the rocks. He tried to hold me, lost a grip, tried. And at the end, thank God we were spared. But the scariest part about that day was me thinking about what if the tide had come when all the children were on the rocks right before us. There would have been a casualty. Definitely. So in my dream, I thought, oh, it's behind the resort. So let's make sure nobody goes to the beach. You know, see how the devil works?
Wow.
The devil is like, oh, she's planning for that. Okay, let's change the game
Strategize.
plan. And so, I mean, that was averted. That was lives that could have been lost that day. And interestingly, when we got out, 2 young girls came to us and they told us that the rock on which we were standing is a shrine. And yes, and she said this happens quite often. It's flat, so people get attracted to it quite often. We're not the first people that this has happened to. And she said, you guys are very fortunate because there are some worshippers of whatever that shrine is. And when this occurs, they run to you as if they're coming to help you, but they actually push you.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
I mean, we just knew God spared our lives, and that really awoken in us the desire to, like you said, be that Jonah that stopped resisting.
Yeah,
that
because
calling.
you've referred to that as a wake-up call.
Yeah.
So before that time, were you resisting God's call to your life? And after that experience, what did that do to you and to your resolution and to your purpose?
So before that, we didn't have an actual ministry here. What we
Okay.
did was we organized crusades. My husband and I are just good at gathering people. So we would bring a pastor, prophet, evangelist from some other country, and then we'll rent an event center and organize crusades. So we were more evangelistic than anything else. And then we had been having discussions about actually starting an in-person meeting. We've had a prayer line since 2008, every day, not every day, 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. We've got people all over the globe joining in. And this is also something we started before conference line and prayer lines became a thing. But back then, one pastor had come to visit us from Ghana, and he said, well, you guys should be knocking on your neighbors' doors like we do in Ghana and calling them for morning devotion. Like, yeah, right. That ain't going to work here. So we just decided we're going to use technology to do that. So we've been doing that. So we've been doing ministry in different capacities, but it wasn't in person. So after that experience, we just embraced the fact that you may not be pastors, but you are ministers in some form and in some capacity, and you have to embrace that and figure out what God wants you to do.
How has your value or your... I'm trying to get a question in terms of how have your understanding of marriage, of parenting, of your function and role as a wife and as a mother, how has it changed when you compare the cultural values from the African culture and to the Western culture?
Okay, I think I understand what you're saying, because traditionally women are the homemakers. That's what that's where you're going with this, right?
That's part of it.
Okay, perfect. So my understanding, I used to struggle with that a lot because I have a very dominant personality.
I can see that.
And so you can imagine everybody's going to quote, wives, submit unto your husbands.
Right.
Well, what does that mean? You know? So I would say my perspective as a woman in marriage and the way I approach business, the way I approach my raising up my children has been grounded in my understanding of Proverbs 31. That's a whole chapter in the Bible dedicated to the woman. That cannot be someone who's behind the scenes. And when you read Proverbs 31, a lot of Africans are focused on, I'm such and such's wife. Have you noticed that? Like, some people get their identity from being, I'm Dr. So-and-so's wife. Well, the scripture in Proverbs 31 says, her husband is known at the gates. That means she's known. Because before you refer to someone and say her husband, that person has to be known. Otherwise, it cannot be her husband. And then the scripture talks about the fact that she's the one that prepares for her children, and so she's not afraid of winter. She's a planner.
Yeah.
The scripture talks about the fact that she considers a field and buys it. She's an investor. So that gave me a totally different perspective of who the woman is supposed to be. And I mean, I don't apologize. I just walk in it because that's the scripture.
Wonderful. Do people struggle to relate with you because of your dominant personality?
I would say several years ago, I took a class. It used to be an issue because my personality is such that I'm a quick thinker. And I don't understand why you're still thinking about the thing that I found a solution to a few hours ago.
Okay.
So that could be a problem in relationships. But I took a class and I read a book called Primal Leadership and the Seventh Leader, and it emphasized emotional intelligence. And I realized that it was critical to reframe myself. It was critical to understand I might have vision 2020. So if you bring me a report, for instance, I can quickly grasp what's out of place, but I don't expect everyone to be able to do that. So I toned down my expectations.
Okay.
I adjusted my expectations, and I worked on becoming more emotionally intelligent so I can relate with people without rubbing them the wrong way.
Wonderful. Now, knowing that you describe about the Proverb 31 woman, and you, I guess your friends and family refers to you as a prayer warrior as well, that's a tall expectation. Do you ever struggle to meet up with those expectations?
I wouldn't say I struggle because I have become very good at setting boundaries. And I think that's critical because a lot of times we attempt as women to become everything to everybody, and we put everybody first.
Yeah.
We prioritize everyone and we put our needs last. But that has substantially changed for me. So I don't think that's an issue for me anymore. Some people may not like it. They may not like the new me, but hey, it is what it is. Take it or leave it. So I am learning to set those boundaries. I am learning. You cannot, a lot of mistakes that people do is they set ministers on a pedestal as if they're not human. Your expectations are unrealistic. Like, this relationship is between you and God, not between you, God, and me. You know, I'm not the mediator. So you go and figure it out, and I'll help where I can. Even in coaching, we got to realize I'm walking by your side. I'm not here to do your job for you. So
now let's talk about this coaching, because this transition phase that you are exploring to flourish within this coaching. And earlier on, you said that the goal is to help people who are burn out, and also to help them to recover.
Yes, prevention and recovery.
Prevention and recovery.
Yes.
And that is out of your own burnt out,
Yes,
and out of your own recovery.
Yes.
So we can as well say that you cannot give what you don't have.
Perfect.
So what are the struggles that have shaped you, that makes you to be burnt out, and how did you recover, that people can learn from?
I would say the experiences that burnt me out was not speaking out. Not because everyone has this expectation. You just keep going and going and going, and you can't pour out of an empty cup.
Very
so that's
true.
what happens to a lot of people. Sometimes there are people who have ended up in psych wards that don't need to be there. If they had just spoken out, if they had just advocated for themselves. So that's one thing that I have been determined to make sure that people are equipped to advocate for themselves. And also part of what I'm doing, my work, is educating the employers, educating the church members, educating, because pastors get burned out because everybody want a piece of them. And like PKs, they call them, pastors' children get a bad rap. They're bad, they're this, they're that. Well, sometimes it's out of frustration because their parents are given to everybody else and they are not prioritized. So we can blame them for reacting the way they do. So educating people to say, learn how to set boundaries, prioritize your families. They're in ministry, they are your congregation first before everybody else comes. If you're in a corporate environment, you have to be able to speak up without it being perceived as weakness. It's a risk in some environments, but that's where training managers to change the narrative. If someone showed up at work with a broken foot and a clutch in their hand, everybody will be showing them empathy. Everybody will be trying to pull a chair. Well, if someone is broken in their minds and their spirits, they should receive the same amount of empathy. But because it's not a physical thing and people don't see it, it's overlooked. And so we have to retrain HR, managers to understand, recognize the signs of burnout and figure out how you can retain your talent rather than lose them due to burnout. And if you get burnt out, don't get stuck. People get stuck and never recover. You have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to re-engineer yourself. You have to be able to figure out, you probably burnt out because you're doing something to pay the bills. When you figure out what it is that you love, you can do it for the next 8 hours and it won't feel like work.
Very true.
As they say, do what you love and love what you do, and you'll never work a day of your life. So people get burnt out because sometimes it's an internal struggle. You're not doing what you're naturally forward to do. So let's find out what that is, and that can change the dynamics of things.
So what's your take on this statement when people are trying to find their career path? They say, do what you love. Mm-hmm. But at times, what people love does not bring money immediately.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So what's your take? How can people navigate that?
I say you navigate that as a process. You navigate that by doing what you need to do to create the stability that you need.
Okay.
And then you follow your passion. Maslow's theory. There are things that you do as you go up the ladder.
That's true.
You don't just start figuring out how you're going to be on top of the ladder if you haven't met your basic needs. So it's a process, but you have to have a plan, because I think what the issue that we have is people don't have a plan. People don't realize this is where I ultimately want to get to. It might take 20 years, but this is where I want to get to, and then make the necessary adjustments and the necessary plans to give you that option. Because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And so people should recognize that ultimately this is what I want to do. My son, case in point, he loves music. He's a creative person. We said, dude, you got to figure out how you're going to pay your bills and then how you're going to follow your passion. So he's in college now in an open curriculum environment. Although he's pursuing technology, he's merging it with music. So he's able to do what's going to pay the bills and still incorporate what he loves. So people just have to figure out what does that blend looks like. Are there options? Just do your research, because it may not just be cut and dry. You may do something that pays the bills part-time and do something that doesn't pay as much, but still gives you the energy to be able to go do what pays the bills.
Absolutely. Now, you talk about children.
Yes.
And that also mentioned speaking out.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up within the African culture, as a child, you don't speak.
Sure.
You only listen to your parent, to the elders. Parenting. How did you adapt with the culture and with the mindset of kids wanting to speak out and say no and say why?
Okay.
Knowing how you were brought up.
Mm-hmm. So I was brought up in a different environment.
Okay.
I was brought up in an environment where I could speak up.
Okay.
So I would, for instance, have conversations with my grandma. If I see someone, like a woman, walking with a child on her back, I'll just say something like, when I grow up, I'll never become like this. I'll be in my car with my husband and my children. And my grandma, rather than just say, just shut up, or what we typically do, she'll say, oh, a good mouth blesses itself, which is a rendition of death and life are in the power of the tongue. So it matters what environment you're raised in. Me bringing that to the table, I allowed my children to express themselves. We might not take what you're saying, but at least you have the place to be able to say your opinion. My husband, on the other hand, he's from a different background. So it can become a bit intense. But when I tell you, we have intense conversations at the dining table, we have intense conversations, and our children don't shut up. They will speak their mind. If they disagree with something, you will know that they disagree. And that's the safe environment in which they are allowed to express themselves. I think doing that for them at home, for instance, allowed them in a school environment, because we moved them into a predominantly white school, and they had to learn to speak up. In fact, they were meeting with the Board of Education for this county to speak up against certain things that were happening, because they are allowed to speak out at home. So, I mean, if I had an advice for African parents, I would say that, yes, your upbringing might have been this way, but learn to give your children a place to be able to speak up and advocate for themselves. You can't raise them like you were raised. This is a totally different environment. You break their confidence at home, they're going to be out there not able to speak for themselves because they were told to shut up at home. They'll go shut up at work when they should be speaking up.
Looking at your career projection and your life pattern, it appears that you were not just chasing after your own success, but you want to leave a legacy behind.
Absolutely.
Also looking at the African heritage, and even with the Gateway to Africa, it is more about other people than about yourself. Why are you so interested in legacy and in other people's success and not your own success?
Well, at the end of the day, when you are gone, very few people are going to care about what's in your bank account. What they're going to care about and the stories they're going to share is what you did, the experiences, how you touched their lives.
Very
so
true.
it is critical that we all focus on that. And that's why I don't focus on what's the bottom line. What change am I going to make in someone else's life? Because I believe destinies are connected. And how you impact one person is going to determine how they impact maybe multiple people that you would never, ever be able to touch. So success for me is a journey, not a destination. And you measure it by how many people you touch along the way.
Who is that one person that have touched you in a way that you will never forget? And in what way did that person impacted your life?
So I can talk about multiple people, but when it comes to, since we're talking about Nashville and we're talking about the African community, I'm going to say Chief Theo Ebujo of blessed memory. The man was a goat.
Really?
Yes, we did an interview. Like we've always, as we're having this discussion, you always see success from a distance. But when you sit down with people and talk and understand the sacrifices that they make, it shapes you.
Very true.
They always say that you learn more having a lunch with a millionaire than you will learn 4 years in college.
Very true.
Because that millionaire is going to leave you with practical nuggets that will shape you and change your lives. And being able to be, to have the opportunity of sitting with him and hearing his life story from starting from ground zero to become the largest minority employer in the state of Tennessee.
Wow.
Meant something. He gave a lot of nuggets. One particular one that stuck with me is the fact that he did whatever it took to be able to take care of his family, pay the bills, while pursuing his dreams, to the point where one day he worked a job as a parking lot assistant in 90+ degree weather because that's what was needed that day. He was starting his business and the money hadn't started coming in yet. That taught me a lesson. And then one thing that he said is thinking outside the box. And your experience with Gateway to Africa. Gateway was never your traditional African market. Like we operated it differently. This man said that when he started his business, it was difficult. That how he brought his staffing agency was thinking outside the box because people always had excuses on why they couldn't come to work. So he would go and pick them up. He gave them the job, pick them up, drop them at the job location. Wow. At the end of the shift, he picked them back up and he paid them that day. That made a difference. So everybody wanted to work for him. And that's how he grew. So the sacrifices, he shared another story. One day, he needed money so much. A Ghanaian professor at TSU said, I have a package that I need to deliver to North Carolina. He asked the man, how much are you paying? The man told him, he said, I'll take it. He was an Uber before Uber became a thing. Wow. He took the package. He said, pay me 50%. I'll go drop it off. When I come, you pay me the remaining 50. And so just talking to a practical person like that, seeing that he started from nothing and he was able to become so great because he sacrificed along the way. And you have to remind yourself, success is a journey. You're going to encounter difficulties, but what you do with those difficulties, you can either see them as stumbling blocks or stepping stones and keep moving.
Talking about legacy and people that impact and touched us, if your children are to remember one thing about you or to learn one thing from you, what would that thing be?
They're going to say, great.
Great.
Grit. Grace.
Grace?
Yes, because my children know that I don't back down on what I believe in. I teach them to go after what you want. Pursue what you want. Put in the effort for what you want. Do your part and God will do his part. You can't be waiting on God when he's waiting for you.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, as we begin to wrap up our session together, knowing that you have a robust background, a CPA, into mortgage, coaching, that's a vast array of knowledge that we can tap from. What are 3 actionable items that you can share that people that want to get their finances together, either from way of thinking or paradigm shift or to practical things? Because for me, it's very painful when I see people that live from paycheck to paycheck. It's something that pains my heart. So what are some 3 practical things or beliefs or mindset that people need to change or do to change their positions and turn their life around?
Well, thanks for asking that question, because working with families about their finances is also another passion project of mine. I've done that for decades. And I help families with budgeting. You have to live, most middle class mentality is live within your means. That's a recipe for disaster. Live below your means. Because if you live within your means...
Because that is what is being taught, live within your means.
No,
but you are saying now, that is wrong mindset. But live below your means.
Exactly.
Wow, okay.
Because if you live, it's not about how much you make. We're constantly figuring out how you can increase that top number. Well, it's not how much you make, it's how much you get to keep. So if you keep increasing the top number and your lifestyle keeps increasing to that top number, you'll be living within your means. But you're a recipe for disaster because you never come out. You never break that cycle and never become financially independent. So learn to live below your means. 2, figure out how to have multiple sources of income. It's critical. You can. I read a book as soon as I got here. Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. There's a cash flow quadrant. You got to determine how you're going to operate in more than one. And if you can create a secondary source of income that is passive in some manner, shape, or form, that would be amazing, because, you only have X number of hours in a day. Yep. So if you figure out how to leverage that and create a second source of income, no matter how small, that can become a tool. And thirdly, educate yourself, educate yourself, educate yourself. You cannot make a system work for you that you don't understand.
True.
Case in point, I always share this wherever I find the opportunity. IRS Publication 701. It is created to give the middle class a step up and a leg up. But so many of us don't understand it, don't know about it, and don't take advantage of it. The code clearly says, most of us are homeowners. That's our first achievement, right? Yeah. Buy a home. But it says if you live in a home for 2 years and you sell it, a single person can walk away with $250,000 tax-free. A couple can walk away with $500,000 tax-free. But we are taught to live in this one house for the next 20 years. The appreciation is going to cap at some point. You're not going to create wealth sitting in one place. People will say, it's too hard to move. Well, it's too hard to move if you call your neighbors to move you and your cousins to move you. But if you're going to get this much of a tax break, can't you take a few hundreds or thousands out of that to pay a moving company? So literally, you can walk away every couple of years. If you do this 4 or 5 times in a 20-year period, do the math.
You mean for them to sell their house and buy another one?
Yes.
But
depending on how much equity, because there's an article that was released a couple of years ago that says it's going to take 250 years to bridge the gap between whites and blacks. Why? Because of real estate and because of where we buy property. Because some appreciate more than others. Some are capped. You can live there for the next 30 years. It's not going to go anywhere. But you can take that, move into the place where you know it's going to appreciate faster, and in no time. That's a property that we bought. Within 6 months, our next door neighbor bought their property for $1 million more than we bought ours.
Wow.
We could have lived where we were for 30 years and never see the light of day of that equity. So I think this is something that was carved in to help the middle class, and yet no one educates us about it and how to take advantage of it.
Wow, that's a gold nugget right there. Because I think it's all about this African mindset that, oh, it's my house, I don't want to leave it, and people just stay put.
A house is just a utility. It's just a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. And then Dave Ramsey says, live like no one else so you can live like no one else. Everybody trying to keep up with the neighbor, trying to impress everybody. You bought a car, I bought a car. You bought this, I did this. Well, all of you are going nowhere.
So there's another struggles that I hear people say that, well, you say I should live below my means, you say I should save so that I can invest, but then I have uncles, aunts back home that I need to be responsible for financially, and I can't juggle all of these things together. What's your take on that?
You can't juggle all of those together. It's part of your budget line item. If $100 is what you allocate to help your uncles and aunties, it's $100. The same auntie and uncle is not going to get $100 every month, right? Everybody's not going to die the same month.
Yeah.
So if you make it a budget item and you put that amount somewhere, you have this pool of money that serves this purpose. And when it's gone, it's gone. But if you make that a budget item, it's not every month that they'll come asking for significant amounts. You have it there. The problem is we don't plan for it. So when that phone call comes, then you dig into your emergency fund because their emergency has become your emergency. But that was not the intent.
Well, interesting. So many things to learn. One, as I begin to wrap up, I know we're out of my time here. 2 questions. One is, a lot of people still struggle between, should I invest here in the US or should I invest back home? What's your take?
Well, I don't know if everybody will agree with me on this, but my take on this is you invest where you are. Start where you are, because there are too many horror stories about people that took their hard-earned money from here, gave it to their cousin Vinny to build a house for them, and that house never got built.
Yep.
Or someone built something that you went to see and got disappointed in. Or you ended up building something that impressed the community but has become a monument because you know that your children are not interested in it and they're not going to live in it. And if they try to sell it, everybody and their mama, probably the land title even has a problem. Like, too many complications, I think, with not establishing yourself here first. If you establish yourself here first, you're welcome to go do whatever, but make sure you have some sort of foundation here, because these children, for real, they have no intentions of doing a lot of things that we did. If you notice, the younger generation, they're not looking for unnecessary responsibility. Like, they're doing live here, work here, play here. They want someone else to manage their yard, do everything for them. Like, don't try to put your responsibility on them. It won't end well.
So are you not concerned or worried that your children may not be connected to the African roots or may lose connection to the African heritage?
Oh, absolutely not. Actually, my children live here, but their favorite foods are African foods. Because
really?
we live like we're in Africa. We've raised them like they're African.
Beautiful.
And you have to constantly take them back. That's what's critical. Let them be connected to the continent by going back and forth. You asked about investing in Africa and real estate. Well, in this day of beautiful hotels and Airbnbs, you shouldn't have a problem living in a nice place for how many weeks in a year do most people that live in Africa spend in Africa? If they live in America, let's face it. How many weeks in a year do you live in Africa?
Almost 2 weeks.
Thank you. Pay for an Airbnb and do your investment here or whatever it is. Make it such that your children can, something that they can convert quite easily if needed, but keep them connected. Let them understand the importance of being Africans. And if you want to invest in Africa, just be sure to. There are a lot of developers now. You can buy a nice high-rise apartment. It doesn't have to be a monumental house in your neighborhood that everybody sees that Oga has arrived. It's not serving any purpose.
Very true. So what do you do for fun and relaxation? And when you miss home, what food is your go-to food?
Well. What I do for fun is I love waterfalls. I'm an outdoorsy person.
Okay.
So the beautiful thing about Nashville is we have unbelievable state parks and waterfalls within an hour to an hour and a half drive from here. So we incorporate that into our lifestyle. Weekends are for fun. You have to make your weekend count. Otherwise, your work week is going to look like a joke.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. We spend time with our family. We just make sure that we're living, not existing, because a lot of people are on autopilot. And we just decided that will not be the case.
What about your go-to food?
Oh, go-to food. I don't want to say jollof, but it is
It must be Nigerian jollof, not Ghanaian jollof.
Absolutely not.
Oh my goodness. You fall my hand on that one. Anyway.
And suya.
And suya.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Nigerian suya.
No Ghanaian suya.
Well, we'll have to take this battle offline. This has been an exciting and an inspirational session of the voyage. Thank you so much, Gina. It has been a pleasure to have you.
No, thank you for having me. This is great. And keep up the good work. This is how we impact others and leave a legacy. You never know who's going to listen to this. They might take one thing from it, and that will change the trajectory. So thank you for everything.
Till another session, the voyage continues. It's your voyage, it's my voyage, where we share stories, where we express our vulnerability, where we connect, and where we tell our stories. Because if you don't tell your story, nobody will tell your story in its true form. So, till another time, like Gina said, it's all about the grit, and it's all about the Holy Spirit leading and guiding your voyage and my voyage. Enjoy your time, and thank you. If you have not subscribed yet, please subscribe to the channel and share the video with your friends and family. And let's keep the voyage continuous. Thank you.